you are entering the Garrison, an historic area.
The Barbados Garrison Historical Consortium, Inc.
So it's either an oval vertical or an oval horizontal. It would be restored to the highest international standards, meeting all the regulations that exist.
Our garrison and its historic area were witnesses to more than a century of interest in military development here. In fact, for many years, over 2,000 soldiers were stationed here to supply the needs of the British military around the Eastern Caribbean. Hello, I'm Sherwood McCaskey, welcoming you to Our Heritage. In this special program, we will take a look at an organization's effort at preserving this entire area for all. But as always, we will begin by placing things in the correct perspective.
In June 1778, France declared war on Britain in alliance with the United States. Within little more than a year, French forces had seized the British West Indian islands of Dominica, St. Vincent, and Grenada. There is little doubt that the French intended to invade Barbados in due course. And in February 1780, British troops arrived to assist the local forces in the defense of the island. After the war ended in 1783, the numerical strength of the British forces was reduced. But in 1785, the British government decided to establish a permanent garrison in Barbados and make the island the headquarters of the British land forces in the Windward and the Leeward Islands. And so there was started the construction of a garrison with its associated buildings for various purposes. More than 100 years after its erection, on December 13, 1905, the last British troop remaining in the garrison sailed away from Barbados, followed in January 1906 by a battalion of the 1st West India Regiment. A few staff officers remained to finalize departmental affairs relating to the British military garrison, which had ceased to exist after 126 years. That departure paved the way for a change in the utility of the buildings associated with the garrison. They became the homes and offices of many, and in some cases suffered the indignity of being altered.
Well, as you are aware, the garrison area forms part of that designated area in Barbados for inscription on the prestigious UNESCO Memory of the World Heritage List. There's a non-profit organization on the island that has been providing invaluable information on the site, working assiduously and quietly to ensure that the garrison meets international standards and that its authenticity and historic value are recognized, highlighted, shared with all, and preserved for posterity. James Blaze and Peter Stevens are members of that organization.
The Barbados Garrison Historical Consortium, Inc. It is a legally incorporated non-profit company. The company was set up by key stakeholders operating within the Garrison historic area to help the Garrison become a well-organized, carefully planned, developed, world-class heritage tourism site. And those stakeholders range from government ministries to hotels, to residences, to other business operators that operate and make a living in and around the Garrison historic area.
One of our remits basically is to see that what happens here happens in a coordinated fashion. As we seek to establish it as an historic district with higher visitation rates, improve on its amenities for recreation and sport, this all has to be managed, coordinated properly. We see ourselves as an agency that is going to be the glue between all the different factions and organizations that exist in the garrison. So rather than people operate independently, get everybody on board in a manner that each independent initiative somehow supports or relies on another. And that way we'll cover much more ground more effectively, less costly. And people that use the garrison will see the results much sooner.
The systematic development of the garrison area is of utmost importance to the Consortium. To date, the Garrison Consortium has been successful in a number of projects. Peter Stevens speaks about the erection of the first 20 benches that allows one to relax around the garrison.
In order for people to enjoy the garrison, to recreate here, they got to have some of the amenities to help them do that. There was a series of benches installed many years ago that had become damaged or destroyed and removed. So we thought it was time to put in a new set, try and make these benches a little bit more in keeping with the theme of the area. It was not possible to bring in heavy cast iron benches that might be the most appropriate. So we decided to keep it as local as possible, get a local firm, design a bench that can be made here, can be ordered in single units for replacement, make the whole thing much more practical and also a lot less costly. So we came up with a wrought iron version, wrought iron and wood, which is being produced by Coles Engineering in Lowlands. And the first 20 have gone in. And basically to make it possible for people to wander around, and it's a big site, you got to take a rest every now and again. And there's other people that are taking a break from work, maybe on the way to catch a bus, that sort of thing. It helps out, and particularly on race day, of course. We don't have enough. We could put 60 benches down, we still wouldn't have enough. We try to put them in areas where they're shaded. It's not always possible. And we try to keep them out of the way of people who park at race day. We're trying to accommodate everybody as much as possible. There's always some compromise, but overall I think it's been quite successful.
The accumulation of garbage creates one of the most unsightly scenes, needless to mention the unhygienic environment that results. While we do not wish to see garbage anywhere, certainly no one wishes to see it in a proposed UNESCO Memory of the World Heritage Site. The Consortium has already taken steps to ensure that all garbage is properly put away.
One of our initial projects was to try and deal with this. There were a series of garbage bins that were put in the early 1980s that did a great job but had become dilapidated and unserviceable, and they weren't very practical for use by sanitation. So we brought in Environ Limited and asked them to place 30 new bins all around the Savannah area where the problem is most concentrated. So those went in. They've been in for a couple of years. They've been doing an awful lot of work. I think we could use another 30, to be honest. We try to site them near to the benches, but not so near that it might, any smells from the garbage might make it unpleasant to sit there. So again, we plan very specifically where these things go, as with the bench. And we have plans in the future to increase the number of bins. Right now, they're doing a great job.
Signage is an important part of the project. To be able to understand a historic site, there must be some form of interpretation. The Consortium has undertaken to place signage on all historic points on the Garrison.
The important thing to realize about the signage that the Garrison Consortium is putting up is that it is all oval in shape. So it's either an oval vertical or an oval horizontal. And those signs you can recognize as the signs that we're putting in place. They all also carry our logo, which is an image of the main guard in its own oval border.
The first wave of signage has been installed on the large Capitol buildings that are located around the actual Savannah. We chose those buildings to begin with because of their stature.
In this particular case, this sign is depicting the stone barracks across the road because we can't actually put the sign on the building. You'd never be able to get up there to read it. So it's placed in an area where people can access the sign and look at the building. In most other cases, the sign is attached either to the building or to the guard wall. It is a crucial part of our UNESCO application for World Heritage, as one of the main points of World Heritage is education. We have a pending World Heritage site. The public have to be able to interpret what the site means, what it's about, and this is part of that program and fulfills that part of the criteria of the application.
Eventually, every historical building or point around the Savannah and throughout the entire garrison will have its sign, its own individual sign. So, phase 1 is in place, phase 2 is coming shortly.
A number of projects designed to create a greater ambience have already been started. Among these is the restoration of the original pedestrian entrance to the George Washington House.
We have partnered with the Bush Hill Tourism Trust, who manage George Washington House, to establish a new pedestrian entry to the property to make it more amenable to people and more accessible. So what will happen is that this relatively new wall here between the two pillars will be removed and be replaced with a semi-elliptical entrance, an area where the wall will be recessed away from the sidewalk. And you will be able to enter this portion of George Washington. The building immediately the other side of the wall will be the ticket office, where you'll purchase your tickets to actually go further and enter the museum itself, or where you can buy souvenirs. The building to your left, which is an 1830s stable, and later was used as a school and even a grocery store in the 1950s, will become a cafe-type outlet. And you will be able to access this cafe, again, without actually entering the museum. So we will create a space here which is essentially public. You can enter without having to pay a fee. You can use the amenities of, say, purchasing souvenirs or the cafe. And should you decide to enter the museum itself, then you purchase a ticket and you go along, where they have beautiful gardens, beautiful house, a wonderful exhibit that anybody would enjoy.
The octagonal cookhouse and its associated buildings are also earmarked for development and will form part of a food court area.
We're in an area here that is behind the A and B blocks at the Garrison. So we have the museum over to our far right that you can't quite see. And this area was basically a facilities area for these large barrack buildings. The barrack buildings were built in 1808. And so what you would have found behind here were the latrines, the cookhouses, the messes that supported the accommodation of the troops. You would never, within the barracks themselves, you would never have had those type of facilities. They were just places to sleep. Everything else would have been exterior to the building. Now, over on our left, we have what we call the octagonal cookhouse. There would have been two. There was another one situated to our right near the corner of this road that was lost more than 100 years ago. And these two cookhouses, each one would have facilitated the corresponding barracks. The building we see on our right, at the far end of the building, is actually the replacement cookhouse for the one that used to exist on the corner. And then the other two buildings we see straight ahead and the yellow one to the left are 20th century buildings that formed part of the residential compound that existed here up until about the early 1970s. Our projected use for this area is that it would be best utilized as a form of food court for the Garrison. That idea that we have what is a very open exhibit and recreational area, and it needs support facilities for all the visitor use, both foreign and local. In this area we have a lot of mature trees. There's quite a bit of shade. It lends itself very well for people stopping, eating, sitting for a while, a sort of park space. May not look it right now, it's somewhat messy. But each of these 4 buildings could constitute a different outlet for food. So we are currently working on the octagonal cookhouse. We have an application submitted to have this building converted into a cafe. It would be restored to the highest international standards, meeting all the regulations that exist, and would be the starting point in a joint venture between the Garrison Consortium and the Ministry of Housing and Lands to have this area utilized for more public amenities in food and beverage. To envisage it, you take down all the fences that you see. Each of the food operations would then have communal space between them that is open to the public and also for use by each of the businesses that would be running here. It would provide a back lot really for the main use around the savannah where people can escape into the shade, use toilet facilities or buy food or drink while they go about either their recreation activities in sports or exercise, or as visitors looking at the various exhibits that exist or the built heritage that will be signed at all points.
The barracks were supported by a number of other buildings that would have provided for the basic needs of the officers: cookhouses, bath houses, and of course, latrines. Peter Stevens speaks of plans to restore the latrine.
This latrine, built around 1808 at the same time as the barracks, was the latrine to support Block A. Each block would have had its own latrine. It has a blind entrance, and inside it contains the remains of cast iron cubicles, and had been used up into the latter part of the 20th century, now defunct. It is the only complete latrine in existence here. We have other buildings that were used as privies, toilet facilities of some nature, but this one is the only one that is really complete. There was one supporting Block B, which was demolished a couple of decades ago, and all the bath houses seem to have gone from this area. But this particular building remains incredibly important and could actually be put back into service, which we think might be one of the best historical uses for the building.
Well, the military garrison was 150 acres surrounded by a wall except on the seaside. It had 4 points of entry and exit. Interestingly enough, I'm standing by what would have been the northern entrance to the garrison. These points were well guarded by sentinels 24 hours a day. Anyone entering the garrison had to state his business before he was allowed to enter beyond these walls.
It is important that people understand when it is they're actually entering the garrison area. It's not always easy to interpret, especially where the original gate posts no longer exist. So here we are at North Gate, just outside of the Barbados Museum. And this sign, situated about 50 yards inside the actual entry point, tells people that as you come down Dalkeith Road here, you are entering the garrison.
You have the 2 original North Gate columns still standing in position. These columns are original. They're the only 2 remaining columns in place of the original 4 gates to the garrison. Here you have one column on my left, and then you have another column on my right. And going from the left column back, you will see the garrison wall, which actually used to encircle the entire garrison, except on the seaside, going that way.
And the wall running to the right is part of the original garrison wall. So we're on the outside looking in. Now, the entrance did not always used to be here. It used to be actually, as we go down Chelsea Road here to the first corner that we can just about see, the entrance would have been directly to the left going into the garrison. Today we go right through the stables. In the mid-19th century, they decided to relocate the entrance up here, where there already was an entry coming from Dalkeith. So they routed the road around this way. This is a later extension of Chelsea Road, to come up here, close the lower entrance, and allowed people from Chelsea Road to enter the garrison at this point rather than about 200 yards further down. And they then made what was a 5 entry point garrison a 4 entry point garrison.
So there was no way into the garrison except through the gate.
Now there are 4 of these signs at the various entry points. One is over by Darrell's Road, where you come around the last sharp bend before entering the garrison. There is a remaining gate pillar there. The other 2 at Brigade Cottage. There's one just outside of Brigade Cottage as you come in from Hastings, and one near Burke's, on the Burke's Beach side of the road as you come up Bay Street, just before you get to the Chelsea Road junction. The actual gate entrance was at Chelsea Road, but the garrison area does exist on the right-hand side of the road before you reach there. And we are in an area which is still used pretty much as it has been for over 100 years. On our right-hand side, we have the main stable compound for the turf club activities. These buildings were built or completed in 1940, but the yard had existed here since the latter half of the 19th century. And although we can't be sure at this present moment what the use of the yard was, since racing had begun in the 1840s, it is highly likely that this yard was set aside for preparation of horses before races. In the late 19th century, there were grandstands located where the current grandstands are, though it is not likely that any of the existing stands are from that date.
There are many interesting artifacts to view and interact with on this 150-acre site. The Consortium is seeking to make it easier for you to traverse the compound. It has recently signed the legal agreement with L&M Workshop to build a special vehicle that was in operation in Barbados in the early 20th century. This vehicle will make it easier for you to explore this open museum of 150 acres.
The exact replica of what used to operate between Bridgetown and Hastings Rocks in the early 1900s. That tram ceased operations in 1925. It was a mule-drawn vehicle that used to run on rails, and it used to transport passengers between Bridgetown and Hastings Rocks, as mentioned. In a very similar vein, transport passengers around the World Heritage Site, or the proposed World Heritage Site of the Garrison Historic Area, and will eventually link Bridgetown and Hastings Rock to the Garrison Historic Area.
The overall work here has been a step in the right direction as we seek to preserve and share with all that unique heritage of the area. Everyone is welcome to be a part of the project, as Mrs. Reed did through her donation of a number of books on the history of Barbados. These were collected by her late husband, who loved the island and spent several vacations here.
We appreciate it very much, and we will certainly take the collection of books that you have so generously donated to us, and we will in particular find good use for them as it relates to the research that we're doing in the Garrison Historic Area and the wider Bridgetown area, as well as the rest of Barbados. So we want to say thank you very much, Mrs. Reed.
It's my pleasure, truly.
Thank you very much.
You too can contribute in some way by contacting the Consortium. The Garrison Historical Consortium Incorporated and its continued work of highlighting the garrison and its economic potential for Barbados. This has been our heritage, the work of the Garrison Historical Consortium Incorporated. Thank you for staying with me. I'm Sherwood McCaskey.